Pretty dramatic race for every single one of those 5, wasn't it? And it was also a dramatic race for Christian Horner, who's joined us straight away here on the Red Button F1 forum. Thank you for pressing red and joining us. Oh, Christian, that wasn't the way you expected today to pan out, was it? Talk us through it from your point of view.
No, sometimes motor racing can be very cruel, and for Red Bull today it was one of those days. I mean, Sebastian and the team had done everything right. You know, we'd read the strategy, the conditions. He got himself into a commanding position, almost in sight of the end of the race, and then a catastrophic engine failure unfortunately denied a certain race victory today. So that was very frustrating. With Mark, he hasn't made many errors this year, but unfortunately he made one today that cost him dearly. But yeah, not the greatest day for us.
Christian, you know, there's a point where it comes, we all know in a season and there's 2 races to go, by far the most likely winner in your team of a possible championship is Mark Webber. Is it time maybe to have a quiet chat within the team as to whether Sebastian would come to the support of Mark and maybe see how they could take the challenge to Ferrari?
Well, as we saw in this race, at different points in the race, different drivers were leading this championship, and it's not until the flag falls in Abu Dhabi. So, you know, Fernando, we gave a big gift today, and you know, as a team, we need to look at that. But you know, we've seen how quickly this can change. And in last year's scoring, there's only 10 points between Sebastian and Fernando. Obviously, Mark's even closer than that. So, you know, our strategy for the time being will be continue to push both drivers.
So although Mark mathematically has a better opportunity to win the title than Sebastian, at Red Bull, at the moment, there is no supporting one driver over another.
It'd be wrong to do that at the moment, because, you know, nobody has a crystal ball. And, you know, if anybody could have predicted today's race, I'm sure they would have done very, very well. Not even Bernie, I would even think, could predict what happened today. And, you know, this championship is not over until the last lap in Abu Dhabi, and we will be pushing flat out until that point in time.
It's all about margins, though, isn't it? What would you do if you were Martin Whitmarsh and you had a driver 42 points behind his teammate with 50 left on the board?
That's a different situation. It's a bit of a no-brainer, you know, at that point in time. But, you know...
no-brainer as in you think that Jenson should be supporting
You would have thought so. I mean, there's only 50 points available. So, you know, I don't run McLaren. That's their issue, not mine.
No, you run Red Bull, and you're still in the lead as far as the Constructors' Championship is concerned. The problem you've got, I suppose, now is to go in and speak to your drivers, because you no longer control the destiny in terms of being in the lead of the Drivers' Championship. What have you said to the guys so far? Have you had a chance to have a word with either of them?
Yeah, I've spoken with both the guys. You know, Mark is obviously bitterly upset with, you know, what happened today. But he'll bounce back, you know, after Valencia, which was the last time he had a DNF. He came back and he won at the next race, so he'll bounce back strongly. He won at Brazil last year. It's a track he enjoys. And Sebastian has been remarkably philosophical, and you know, it's testimony to his character that he's dealt with that issue. And again, we'll come back in Brazil stronger, but it's cruel for him, because it's not the first time, and to lose out, you know, a guaranteed race victory like that is tough. I mean, motor racing is a tough sport, but today it was particularly tough on him.
How hard is it, Eddie, to put a smile on the face of an unhappy racing driver? You've had to do it a few times in your career. Has Christian got a tough couple of days ahead?
He has, and he knows that. But you see, Christian has been around. What I love about this team, even in the darkest, literally the darkest moments, that they're able to handle it. I saw a very honest Mark Webber come straight out without even hesitation, my fault. And then you saw Sebastian speaking to the press, bitterly disappointed, but he held himself up, and I'm really proud of what you've instilled and the kind of form of management that you put into the team, because it's refreshing. It's really nice. You're not being bum steered all over the place. I mean, it's a really nice atmosphere, and I hope you're able to continue with it, because, as you rightly say, this championship is clearly not over yet.
You made me blush.
Never.
Oh, lovely. A couple of tweets coming in. We should give these to you while you're here. My Nan says, not my Nan, that's their username. Did you hear Vettel mention 2 red lights on his dashboard? We didn't hear anything more about that. No one mentioned it. Was that something to do with the engine?
No, I mean, we were talking to Sebastian about the daylight, actually, because that obviously started to drop quite quickly. And then he came on the radio and just said, you know, engine failure. That was the first we knew. He felt it before even the guys on the monitoring racks saw it, and you know, the result was very visible for everyone to see.
Guy on Tech wants to know how many engines does Vettel have left in his allocation, and are you worried about the number of engines that are left for your guys?
He's used all 8, but obviously mileage remains on some of them. So at the moment, he should be okay to the end of the year. Absorb that engine. It was scheduled to be its last race here.
One here about why doesn't Lewis Hamilton look happy, but I guess that's for a different team principal, not for you. But this one is for you. Do you and the fellow team principals truly believe that this was a circuit ready to hold a race? That's from Mark Bob 917, because it did feel like there wasn't an awful lot of rain out there, but for some reason the track just wasn't drying, wasn't draining, they couldn't clear the rain.
Yeah, I mean, I think with any new surface, it's always going to struggle to drain, and we saw that even in new bits of the track in Singapore a couple of weeks ago. So I think the race that we had today, even though painful for us, it was actually a very good race, and it's a good track. It's in its first phase, we all know that, but hats off to all the Koreans for getting a Grand Prix up and running, and I'm sure it will only be better when we come back in 12 months.
But you're aware that a track that would have drained itself might not have stuck Mark Webber in the wall?
A wet curb at any circuit in the world can have that effect.
Okay, Christian, thank you very much. Eddie, okay?
I'm just going to say I can't imagine Korean Grand Prix is top of his Christmas card list.
No,
but,
maybe not.
There'll be other ones, don't worry.
Maybe
Japan
not.
probably, maybe, but this one not. But then it's ups and downs. Who knows what's going to happen? You've been a winner last time out in Brazil, so let's hope for your sake that that replicates itself.
And thank you very much for coming to join us here on the F1 Forum. We'll see you in Brazil and we'll see you in Abu Dhabi, and you might as well give a wave to the Christian Horner fan club because they're quite vociferous on Twitter. They never leave me alone. All right, nice to see you, Christian. Take care. All the very best. Okay, we're going to head inside McLaren, which is where we're based for our F1 Forum today. So any questions you've got for any McLaren team members, I'm sure we'll be joined by them. Get those coming in. Questions for David as well, who's been at the McLaren Technology Centre, and Eddie. We'll get chatting in a big way on the F1 Forum very soon. But first, here are the highlights of what was a special Grand Prix. Is absolutely brilliant. Sums up the race, Feb, I think, Martin, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially when he lost that place to Lewis Hamilton in the pit stops and he slipped back to third at that point. Knowing him, he was still thinking, I'm going to win this race. He's got an amazing amount of confidence, and it spreads into the team, doesn't it? Yeah. He's definitely, the team are growing around him, and that's why I think he said over this weekend it's his best year in Formula One. Of course, it didn't make the Renault team very happy, and they won 2 championships together, but he loves it. They love him.
And here we are inside the McLaren home for the weekend. These are quite impressive buildings, actually, that have been built in the paddock here, and they're quite large, they're spacious. You can see the guys working away behind us. Quite often members of the media or team sponsors will spend race day in here. Eddie, you and I sat on the table just here and watched the race unfold, and it was very interesting. Team Jenson were in front of us on those sofas, Jessica Jenson's girlfriend and John, his manager, and the emotions between them, and then later on in the race when Lewis pushed his way through into second place. It was quite interesting to watch it unfold, wasn't it?
Well, it's a little bit unfair, really, because we're being given a very privileged position where normal access to this kind of thing shouldn't or wouldn't normally be given. So, of course, emotions run high because you've got 2 drivers with both different fan bases all competing inside the one team umbrella. So when one week, when Jenson wins in Malaysia or wherever it was, or in Australia, then you have the opposite applies, and so it always to's and fro's, but nevertheless there is a great bond between these teams, and I think this is a great example of how teamwork works really well. But just if I may come back to the thing we saw in Jenson's after race chat with the media, which at all wasn't pleasant. He didn't want to be doing it, but he did say the championship was over for him, and I think that was very inside as to what he feels is the future of this championship.
Okay, well, we're hoping to be joined by Jenson Button very soon, so we would love you to get in touch on Twitter and on the email if you've got any questions for Jenson, if you would like to maybe commiserate with him after a difficult Grand Prix, perhaps gee him up ahead of the next couple of races, because remember, mathematically, he's still in the hunt for the title. Maybe you want to know what's going to happen inside McLaren in the future. We'll discuss that. But before we get on to the race, Martin, let's just go back to before the race, and you were sitting in the commentary box, and you were quite vocal. At one point, you said, what's the point in bringing wet tyres if we're not going to race in the wet? And F1 does feel like it's becoming a bit more risk-averse in these situations.
I think the problem is with this democracy of listening to all of the drivers, it puts the decision makers in a virtually impossible situation should there be a serious injury or fatality. And I think it's steering it. I think it's steering it too much now, because for me that race could have and should have started somewhat earlier. When they first went out behind the safety car and there was a lot of water on the track, I'm thinking this is the right decision. I would have made the wrong decision there. I would have started the race. But there will always be spray and wet conditions. Drive the cars accordingly with your visibility and your grip, as we used to do. Otherwise, you know, as I said, leave the wets at home, because that today, for me, set a dangerous precedent of not starting a race, because there might be some spray around. So does that mean now, you know, they're going to quote that as an example? Because we've raced in much, much worse conditions than that.
Well, you both have. I mean, Eddie, one of your big wins, 98, Spa. I mean, we've all seen the shot of Michael Schumacher hitting the back of David Coulthard. You couldn't see a thing. It almost looked like it wasn't raining out there. There was a line drying as well. Some of the drivers were saying they were going to go on to Inters rather than full laps.
I'm glad to hear Martin say that he thought he got it wrong for the first part, because I actually did disagree with you at the time. I thought it was then too dangerous. But he is right subsequently. You know, we can't mollycoddle these guys. They're being paid a lot of money. They are racing drivers. There is excitement. And yes, you have to race in the wet. It's part of our sport. Spa, I will say one thing for Spa, that the water does drain away. This is a brand new circuit, so the resin or the epoxy on top of the circuit is still brand new. It hasn't yet sort of bedded in, and as a result there was nowhere for the water to go. It stayed seemingly on the track, and it was the spray that was my concern. It wasn't necessarily the track condition, it was the effect of the spray and the visibility.
Well, the spray stayed around so long, I guess, because it wouldn't drain, the water wouldn't drain from the track. But if you're watching us in the UK on the F1 forum, it's going to be sort of late morning with you, and you're not the only one watching us, because David Coulthard is doing exactly the same thing. Busy chatting away with people who are off camera. Hello, David. Who were you talking to there?
I was talking to Richard Gort. Hi there, how are you?
We're very well, thanks. Well, you can talk to us now. Richard Gort, if you're wondering, is the producer that's been hanging out with David all weekend. I'm sure he's been well behaved. David, we're just talking about the weather. You've raced in conditions much worse than that. Were you sitting in the technology centre getting increasingly frustrated with this decision not to bring the safety car in?
Well, if you look at the contrasting weather, if you look in the background here, we've got beautiful sunshine here in Woking. I wasn't frustrated for the fact that the drivers were making their call, and they're obviously in the best position to inform the race director what the conditions are. But you've got to be frustrated for the fans sitting in the grandstand, the fans that have tuned in all around the world, some of whom may be tuning in for the first time, and they're seeing these highly paid supposedly best drivers in the world driving these sophisticated cars, and following a modified road car around. So that is a bit embarrassing, quite frankly. But what I think is very interesting was the contrast between those who had quite a lot to lose, the Red Bulls, saying that conditions were not ideal, and those that had a lot to gain, namely Lewis Hamilton, who was just giving all the messages saying, come on, we've had worse conditions than this, let's get on with it.
OK, David, well, thank you very much. We'll leave you there at the Technology Centre. We'll come and join you a little bit later on. David, of course, was a man who used to drive for McLaren and was based at the Technology Centre, and this is a man who does exactly that at the moment, Jenson Button. Jenson, difficult race from your point of view. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I was just slow, basically. You could say that maybe we did the wrong thing with strategy and what have you, but none of that really matters. I was just slow, and we're looking at the reasons for it now, but, I normally like the wet conditions, and I just couldn't find any grip out there at all. It just felt like I just couldn't get the tyres working. At points in the race, I was 4 seconds slower than Lewis, and very strange. Also, I was destroying tyres, fronts and rears, so, yeah, something we've got to look at, because it's very strange.
Well, I know that McLaren aren't short of a computer or two, so I'm sure that your guys have been huddled around those computers at the moment. Can you share with us maybe any early indications you've received as to why, for some reason, your car just wasn't working those tyres?
No, I think we're all a little bit lost to the reasons why. We have a lot of new parts on the car here, which have worked very well. And, I've got to say a big thanks to the whole team to have brought these here, because the car has definitely improved. But for me in the race, I just couldn't find any grip anywhere. And it's a sad Grand Prix, really, because it's a lot of points that we could have taken off of Red Bull here.
Jenson, that's normally your kind of territory, those conditions, and you've won 2 Grand Prix already this year. Was your car different to Lewis's in any way? Had you got an identical car?
No, the cars were different, but the cars were different, and it's something that I chose to run with, a new part that I thought would benefit me here. It did in the simulator. But looking at it now, some of the issues I have could possibly have come from what I was running. But, you know, you got to take risks and you got to try new things. And with the limited testing we have, I think it was the right thing to take the chance and to take the risk. And it just didn't work out for us, and especially in the low grip conditions.
Jenson, at the first post-race interview you did, your body language was obviously very dejected. But the point that I want to pick up on is you said you felt your championship was over. And if you still believe that it's over, if you were called upon by the bosses within the McLaren framework to let's get behind Lewis because technically he's possibly the only one that can win this championship for this team, would you do that?
If mathematically I couldn't win the championship, yes, I would. And you know, you say lots of crazy things after. I don't mean you, Eddie.
Well, he does.
That sounded great,
does,
didn't it? Stopping there. But you know, we say lots of things in the heat of the moment, and you know, I was pretty emotional when I got out the car. But my championship, if nothing else, you know, if the other guys don't have issues, don't have failures, non-scores, yeah, my championship is pretty much over. But you know, you don't win championships by sitting back and saying that's it, I can't win it. You do fight until the end. Until I can't win the championship mathematically, I have to keep fighting. And you know, everyone keeps talking about Kimi and how he won the championship in 2007, but that's not the only time. It's happened time and time again. And seeing what's happened to the Red Bulls here, you know, they've lost so many points that they could have walked away with it if they'd finished 1-2 here. So it proves that it can turn around very quickly. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but and it's a very small chance, but that's all I need to keep pushing. And
if McLaren make the point to you that 42 points behind with 50 up for grabs is not just unlikely, it's incredibly slim, your chance of winning the title. If they said, look, we need to keep the team happy, we're here for the team, would you do it for us? What would be your answer to that? I won't be asked. If I can't mathematically win the championship, I would do whatever I needed to for the team. Definitely, that's just in me. That's not what I would be asked to do. That's just what you do as a driver. You know, when you can't win the championship anymore.
I mean, that's a service you would expect. So, for you, it's a critical difference, mathematically or realistically. It's a clear difference. Yeah, definitely. You know, if Kimi sat back and thought he wasn't going to win the championship or walked away, thought he wasn't going to win the championship in 2007, we'd have a different world champion. So, yeah, you've got to push on until the end.
Do you think that the part that you alluded to there, you talked that you took a risk on a new part, it has to be a combination of a whole lot of things because it's so uncharacteristic to be that far off your natural pace in the conditions where you excel normally?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it wasn't just being so far off Lewis, it was also I couldn't hang with the pack either. You know, I was at the back destroying tyres and yeah, I don't know the reasons for it at all. And it is very strange because, you know, I do enjoy these conditions, and when it's thrown up in the air and it's different grip level than you've run all weekend, it's something that I would normally love and really enjoy. But I couldn't get close to anyone to even overtake, and for me, I just didn't have any grip. You know, I'd brake, the fronts would lock solid, I would go straight on, and try and get on the power and just wheel spin, and yeah, it was just such low grip for me. It was like I was driving on a different circuit.
How did you feel about the start of the race? If I can just butt in, Jake.
No, do.
The start of the race. Did you think that you could have started earlier? It started at the right time, or did you think this track's not ready yet?
When we first went out for the first start, you know, before the red flag, it was so wet. I've never seen a circuit like it. The thing is that the spray was unbelievable. Plus, the circuit was it just looked like a lake. But also, I didn't have any aquaplaning. It wasn't like I got to a corner or an area on the straight and aquaplaned. It wasn't like that. It was very different. It was just the whole circuit looked like it was an inch underwater. And you just couldn't see a thing. and it was just scary driving down the straight, knowing that at any point it could break away. You thought it could break away, and also you couldn't see anyone in front, and it was a horrible situation. I've never had it like that before, that it's that close to you.
Are you guys happy to come to a circuit that's never hosted a race of any calibre before a Formula One race weekend? Is that cool for you?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job, and I think that what they did today was correct. You know, they were very cautious in letting us go. You know, we probably could have started 2 or 3 laps before we did, because it didn't really change over those 3 laps. But you know, they're right to be cautious, because those conditions, it would have been a terrible start to the Korean Grand Prix, and that's not what we want our first year here.
Can we just ride on board with you for a moment in the rain? And we often tell people they can press the red button if they want to get involved in seeing what a driver sees. Is it that bad for you? Is it better? Is it worse? How does that compare?
That's like it is for me, because I couldn't see anything out my visor. I had to keep wiping it sort of 3 or 4 times a lap.
And you're doing what kind of speeds at this point?
I don't know where I am.
I think you're probably just coming down to turn 1, aren't you? Past
there you go, there's a car in front.
Yeah.
That's turn 1. That's what when you're braking is, you see the car in front and you brake. So no, it's pretty bad, and you know, for me, that's pretty much what we see. When you're in the car, you're obviously feeling the bumps, you're feeling the circuit, so you know where to brake. But yeah, that is what we see. It's very little.
Jenson, just to try and give the people at home some appreciation of what it's like, is this as bad? Is it worse? To the biggest downpour you've ever had on the M1, going up the M1, where you had to go to the inside lane and crawl along at 30 miles an hour because you can see nothing, all the big trucks, the spray coming up. This is what you're doing, supposedly at 100 plus miles an hour. They're equating to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I've driven on the motorway, obviously at 70 miles an hour, and I've had people come past me, and it's been so wet, it's unbelievable. And, you know, they don't understand, if they hit a puddle, an aquaplane, they are going to lose control completely. And that's an understanding we have of where the limit is of the car, and also of where the circuit is, and the limit of the amount of water around the circuit, and what you can drive through without being out of control. So this is pretty crazy what we do, and in a way we are silly, you know. We're driving along at 200 miles an hour and we can't see a thing in front of us. You don't know if someone stopped in front or is it a car sitting across the circuit. You've just got to be brave and hope that no one's had an accident in front.
I think the best thing to do is not think about that. We've got to let Jenson go, I'm afraid, Eddie. We would love to sit and talk to Jenson for a long time, but there are people that want to go and discuss your race with you. But lots of messages coming in on Twitter, including people reminding you about Kimi in 2007 and saying, keep your chin up, stick in there, because you're still in the hunt.
Thank you. I'd like to say also, good job to Lewis. I don't know how his car was, but it was pretty tough out there. So congrats to him, and yeah, he's got some good points this weekend.
Take it for a spin and compare it to yours.
Cheers, man.
See you later on. Take care, Jenson. Thank you very much. And we'll let Jenson walk out. It's great, you know, even when Jenson struggles at a race weekend like this, and we've seen this a few times this season, he'll always come and talk to us, won't he?
Yeah, in a way, I think that's the new JB after he got the World Championship, and he feels, you can tell he's comfortable with himself, he's comfortable with his environment, and it's as Dan as I've seen him for a long time, I have to say. He really is absolutely chin on the floor, isn't he? But as you say, respect him for coming and explaining to us why it didn't feel so good.
OK, well, let's get to the action then, Eddie. And it wasn't long after this that Jenson was starting to struggle. We saw Michael Schumacher pop past him. This was the first racing lap of the Grand Prix. And looking at the amount of spray that's still being kicked up at that point, it really was difficult for those drivers, Eddie, because many people were frustrated on Twitter and on the emails saying, you know, you've got to get this race going. But from what Jenson's saying, it clearly was tough.
Well, it was tough, and in some ways I agree with Martin to say that maybe the drivers have that little bit extra control that they didn't have before, and maybe too much democracy. But in this particular case, I think the drivers got it right. We got a sensational race in safety. No one was hurt. You know, what is ironic, we also remember earlier on in the show we heard Michael Schumacher saying that experience or winning a world title didn't matter. It's funny that you should... The 4 top drivers, out of the 4, only one of them is not a current world champion, or wasn't a current world champion. So it sort of defies logic how he came up with that particular remark. I don't agree with it. I think experience is a hugely important aspect, and it will play very heavily into the hands of Alonso, because he has been there before. He knows what to expect.
And Martin, we can see, you know, Jenson struggling really early on in this Grand Prix, can't we? It was clearly a very difficult afternoon for him here.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Schumacher was on him straight away, wasn't he? And I think Jenson's alluding to the fact he got something on his car that in the end didn't work out in the conditions. which is unfortunate, because at the end of the day, all that was behind him was a Lotus and 2 HRTs in the Grand Prix. That's how much JB struggled today. And, he was losing places left, right and centre. Although I seem to remember saying, it's a long commentary and I'm a bit punch drunk if I'm honest, but in the very, very early stages, he seemed to be more comfortable than Lewis. Lewis was struggling, wasn't he, first off? But then he found his rhythm and found a way.
That's exactly it. It was just after that when Jenson was taken by Schumacher, he then pitted and he just couldn't get the car right. Someone else who didn't really get a chance to work out whether he could get the car working from right or not was Mark Webber. Just explain to us, Martin, as a former driver yourself, how easy is it to just put a couple of wheels on the curb and spin yourself into a wall, which is what Mark Webber managed to do here?
Too easy, unfortunately. It's one of those pathetic little accidents. I'd just like to see a throttle trace there if Mark wasn't just a touch over-eager. He might have been able to dab a bit more brake on as well and stop himself going across the racetrack.
He thought that he'd saved the spin at that point then?
I think he did. I think he caught it, didn't he? Had he let it run
just
along the curb, he'd have been okay. Or he should have been okay.
Absolutely. He'd got a left rear puncture and all sorts, so that's probably why he couldn't slow the car down from coming into the path of Rosberg. But if I remember, here we go, let's just listen. Just a little bit too much throttle, a bit over-eager because he knew he was having a bit of a moment, and that was enough. And that was the famous turn 12 with the off-camber tarmac. And that's why it felt such a silly accident, I would say. But Mark was a touch over-eager there on the throttle.
You could also hear the engine just momentarily move up. That's where the wheel was spinning. Lost traction. He probably didn't know it, but he was probably riding the board.
And that's what happened to Nico Rosberg, who up until that point was having a really good run as well. He looked great. And the Mercedes looked great in these conditions,
It did,
actually.
yeah. I mean, he nailed Lewis straight away, didn't he, on when the race finally got underway.
OK, well, let's hear then from Mark Webber. He spoke to Lee McKenzie as the race was unfolding.
Mark, so disappointing. Just tell us what happened.
Yeah, totally my fault. I got on the curb on the exit of turn 12 and it was a very slow motion moment off the back of that curb, so totally my mistake. And today wasn't my day.
Did you think you'd managed to catch it just as you were going across?
Yeah, it was a very long one, frustrating, and I thought I had enough, but in the end, it wasn't enough. So the wall obviously was close and did some damage, and then obviously I wrecked Nico's race as well. So,
Conditions good enough to be racing in, though?
Yeah, I think the conditions were fine.
If the race finishes in this way, you'd go back to third in the championship with 2 races to go. Can you still win this championship?
Yeah, absolutely. I think positions are not really important at the moment. Obviously, the points are the most important thing, so they can change very quickly. Obviously, it's my second non-finish of the year, so still 2 races to go. So, of course, I'll do my absolute best.
Well, it's nice to hear a driver taking full responsibility. This was Mark Webber making his way back into the paddock just after that Grand Prix. How do you assess Mark Webber's situation in the championship battle at the moment, Eddie? He's very much lacking momentum, isn't he?
Vulnerable, I would say. He needs, without any question of doubt, he needs the full support at this moment of time of Sebastian Vettel. The team need to think about it. They need to see what is important. Is it important to win the Constructors' Championship, or is it important to win the Drivers' Championship? But one way or another, it doesn't look to me if in a straight fight he can take the fight to Alonso in the current situation. But things can change quickly.
But if you're looking for the school of positive mental attitude, Mark started today 14 ahead, he's 11 behind. That must be doable because he's seen, he knows the problems you're going to have. And he's still fundamentally got the fastest car on the racetrack.
I suppose Mark will be looking at the results of the last few races, though. And, Fernando Alonso, as we've said a few times, he's won 4 of the last 7 Grand Prix. The guy is picking up points, just sort of stealing them from everybody around him. He is on form, and he's got to beat Fernando Alonso and his teammate if he's going to win the title, isn't he?
He has. I mean, he's got a challenge now in Alonso because he's on fire, isn't he? And the whole team's focused on him. I think he's got such a handy points advantage over his teammate now that sooner than later, depending on how the race unfolds in Brazil, I think he might just have some assistance and a rear gunner. And, they have the 2 fastest cars on the racetrack. Of that, I have no doubt. And we're moving into territory where I think they'll be very strong as well, Brazil and Abu Dhabi. So I don't think Mark should go home in despair. The frustration for him today was, of course, It's a victory he threw away.
For me, there is another aspect to this, and that is, could anybody sitting at home logically go to the bank and take out their hard earnings and place a bet on anyone other than Alonso, bearing in mind that Massa is going to be very quick in Brazil. The team is fired up. The momentum is with them. They've won 4 of the last 7. In fact, Alonso has won 4 of the last 7 races. And, you know, it's going to take a big effort and a big chunk of good luck to be able to get anyone to come up against Ferrari at this moment in time, because there's only 50 points left on the board, and that's what, you know, Alonso was very astute, very clever. 5 races to go, and he said, if I finish on the podium on each of the 5 races, I'll win this championship. He's been very strong and mentally about it, so he has the upper hand, make no mistake.
Okay, if we just take a look what's happening behind us, there's some of the national press chatting to Lewis Hamilton. He'll be hopefully joining us on the F1 forum in just a couple of moments as soon as they've stopped interrogating him. But while we wait for Lewis, let's have a quick mention on Sebastian Vettel. Within Red Bull, he had the momentum, he was picking up the points. It'll be interesting to see how and if today's result affects him.
Well, how cool a guy is he? You know, he's a very young one. He will be a future world champion, and he'll be a great future world champion. But he drove a perfect weekend. Pole position, running away. Every time there was a safety car, off he went.
He looked like Mark Webber did in Monaco, didn't he?
Absolutely was just in a different class. And who knows what happens, a gearbox failure or an engine failure, and then these things happen. Of course, in this case, it was an engine failure. He'd be very disappointed, but he didn't point the finger at anyone. He just said, look, I did my best. I had it under control. I would have won the race, but he didn't.
Okay, well, another man who didn't, but wasn't far off doing just that, was Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, welcome to the F1 Forum. Nice of you to come and join us, and after a good result as well. Now, let's just take you back to sitting behind the safety car in the rain. It was interesting because we get all the feeds from all the different drivers and their radios, and we had a couple of Red Bull drivers saying, no, we don't want to go racing in this, let's stay behind the safety car. And you kept coming on saying, this is almost Inter's. What's going on? Let's start the race. What was it like sitting behind that safety car, seeing it get drier and drier?
You know, it was, for me, it didn't feel any wetter or difficult visibility than any other wet race I'd had. I mean, it was definitely extreme, but in places like Fuji and many other races that we had this year in the wet, it was the same visibility. The grip was actually really good. There was not too much standing water that the tyres couldn't get rid of the water, so I didn't see why not.
Did you have any aquaplaning at any time once you got underway?
No.
None whatsoever.
No aquaplaning at all. You know, that's why there was good grip and never had any problems with that. So that's why I was saying. But I knew when we were sitting on the grid, I saw Mark on the TV, probably speaking to Charlie on the radio. We shouldn't do the race. You know, he needed the points, but you know, it was slippery out there. But I didn't think that, you know, the track was. I think the track's been great this weekend.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. That was very short and very sweet, but apparently you have to go.
Yeah, otherwise we're not going to get home, so...
Okay. All right, well, we'll sit here and talk about you rather than talk with you.
Obviously.
Just answer this one quick question. How do you feel for the title? Good?
I feel good.
Great. That's all we need to know. And are you expecting to be supported by your teammate? If there's one question that's going to make Lewis Hamilton walk away quickly,
You're so cruel, you know, you are.
It was a joke. He took it in good humour. What a great drive from him today, though, and it was sort of 2 big contrasting emotional moments for him. The first one would have been as he flew past the pit lane, thinking, hold on a minute, Fernando Alonso should be somewhere near here, and then after the safety car had gone in and he overshot going into the first corner. But he finished second. He should be happy with that.
Well, it possibly cost him the victory, didn't it, in terms of... this poor pit stop from Ferrari with the missing wheel nut. Very interesting wheel nuts.
As we found out today.
As we found out earlier on. Got him up into second place, but then he got a little bit too ambitious on the brakes on the restart, which allowed Alonso straight back through, and almost Massa past him as well. So, you know, you could look at that and say, actually, had Lewis not have made that mistake on the restart, which is what we're now seeing, and fed back in between the Ferraris, he might just have won the race. But I think because Alonso's tyres were so much better in those last 3 or 4 laps, then I'm not sure he'd have got the victory anyway.
I think Lewis will go home with mixed feelings. He'll go home, wow, I was lucky to get a second place here, but listen, I'm bitterly disappointed with myself because something happened that traditionally I wouldn't have allowed to happen, and that is, in these conditions, I'm pretty top of the bunch in terms of quality and style and speed, and he dropped it. As far as I'm concerned, he made a mistake. Martin's made the point that possibly he would have. I'm saying he almost definitely lost the race, because I think there were very, very few major passing moves at the front of the race, and as a result, I think that maybe Lewis would have gone on to win the race, because he would have had the momentum to carry him through to it.
Okay, now we might have to discuss this with our voices slightly low, because all around us are silver tops, and it's an awkward place to have this conversation. But you've got Lewis Hamilton, 25 points away from leading the championship. You've got his teammate, 42 points away from leading the championship. Lewis Hamilton, who's just gone outside actually on the terrace to speak to some more British media, would he be going to Martin Whitmarsh and saying, Martin, come on, 42 points, the guy's not in it. I now need the support of my teammate. I need you to help me and McLaren win the title. What will he be doing?
Discussions and thoughts will take place, of course. And that's why I asked Jenson the question about mathematically and realistically, because they're very similar now. And the McLaren lead from the top. You know, the drivers don't tend to go in coming up with ideas and making decisions. But there will. But I think it'll depend how the race unfolds in Brazil. I don't think they can make a decision before that. They've got to see how it is unfolding with the Brazilian race. But you can see, I think I said in the commentary, that for me now, you know, McLaren will have to get behind Jenson, and Red Bull will have to get behind Mark Webber in Brazil as the race is unfolding, if they want to beat a one-man Ferrari team.
That was a good example of how busy a driver is actually at a Grand Prix weekend. Lewis Hamilton being pulled from pillar to post, speaking to the media. Let's head back to the technology centre, Eddie, because David Coulthard is there. David, I actually outdid Lewis Hamilton there. He's only 21 points away from leading this championship, which probably makes it even more crystal clear, doesn't it, for McLaren? 21 and 42. Those two drivers are split. You need to support one, do you?
Well, I would ask the question, what would you expect the teams to do in preparation for Brazil? You know, they've set sail with the gearboxes, the engines, you know, aero parts. You could argue if they've got some upgrades going into Brazil, if they can only get enough for one car, then logically you'd put that onto Lewis's car. But if you presume that they've got enough parts to supply both of them with equal machinery, they've got to just let them do their weekend, and then after qualifying, decide who has got the best chance, because you know, we don't know today. Maybe Jenson sticks it on pole in Brazil and Lewis has a difficult one and is in 5th, 6th place, and what can you do from that position? So I agree with what Martin said, and my own personal experience of being here at McLaren is that they have the capacity to think and react during the event, rather than having too many sort of predetermined, okay, you know, you're number 2 now, sit to one side and we'll call you when we need you.
We were expecting a little bit more from McLaren this weekend, particularly when it started raining. From what you've seen this season, particularly from what you've gleaned this weekend, because I know you would have been looking at all those computers knowing just what they were telling you, do you think they've got the car to win the title?
I think they're lacking a little bit of pace. I think that they've made great development during the course of the year. They tried in Suzuka to get the aero upgrades onto the car, and they weren't able to validate everything to race it there. They were able to get the upgrades on for this new Korean race circuit, but in the end there just isn't quite enough pace from the car overall on the lap. And when it comes to the critical moment in qualifying, Red Bull have been able to step it up, and Ferrari have had a little bit of an edge on them as well. But I think the race pace is strong, and you know, I genuinely believe that they're still in this championship, but it's going to take a further upgrade, or it's going to take some bad luck, some further bad luck for the Red Bull guys, or a mistake from Fernando for them to win this. I don't think they have the pace to win it outright.
David, we just saw when we went, the camera moved, that there was a very nice embrace between Jenson and Lewis. So clearly they are still working very closely together, and whilst it's important that us, maybe if we can, that the media, we're not going to be told precisely what's going on, but they'll work it out surely between themselves, and qualifying will be the defining moment in Brazil as to what is going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's enough respect, a very genuine respect between Lewis and Jenson, that neither of them is going to deliberately get in the way of the other. You know, this is not like when we saw Fernando and Lewis together in McLaren, and quite clearly Fernando was prepared to quite literally get in the way of Lewis to scupper his hopes for the championship. You know, these, both the case of Lewis and Jenson, they're both highly motivated, they're world champions, and they would both desperately like to win another. But they're not going to step in the way and create that bad energy and bad blood within the team. So let's see what the qualifying in Brazil brings out. But there'll be gentle conversations rather than any direct conversations, I believe, in the last 2 races.
OK, David, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your contributions over the course of the weekend from the Technology Centre. Don't steal that car, will you?
Beautiful.
Beautiful indeed. No, it's a lovely car. Thanks very much. We'll speak to you soon. And he's gone, just like that. Let's get back to the racing. Let's talk about Sebastian Vettel. We were discussing him, and we actually discussed there, Martin. Do you think that Lewis Hamilton or Jenson Button have the car to win the world title? Does Sebastian Vettel have the car to win the world title? We've got a question that's come in on Twitter here saying car issues alone have cost Sebastian 64 points. That's according to David Kent 80 doing his maths. We saw again today a problem with the engine. Do Red Bull have the speed, but they don't have the consistency or the reliability? Is that what it is?
Well, Lewis had a gearbox failure in Hungary and a front wheel coming loose in Barcelona. I mean, they've all got sob stories about their car letting them down. You have to say, I think Sebastian's been pretty unlucky. Spark plug Bahrain, wasn't it? Front wheel loose in Australia. And obviously the engine blowing up today. There's one other I can think about there as well. But he's also done his fair amount of crashing into other cars. So he's been on pole 9 times this year. The team have been on pole 14.
Yep. Out of 14 out of 17.
17 races. They have the speed. I think they fundamentally have the reliability. Yeah, as good as anybody else's.
Well, hopefully we can see the moment that Sebastian's engine finally let go here, Eddie. What do you think about this car?
It's the best car in the paddock, beyond any doubt. Technically, it's ahead of the game. Adrian Newey is, for me, the best designer in Formula One. He's proved that in every team he's been to. I am convinced that this is the winning car, but it's a very big shout for them because in real up till today, they had the possibility of Webber or Vettel possibly winning the championship, and they looked possibly Vettel, as you called it in the last race, Martin. You said he's possibly the top man to win this championship. Not after today.
Yeah, that was a bitter blow for Sebastian Vettel's chance to win the world title. I think this year he could have and should have won it last year, but for a couple of errors. And what else can he do? He keeps putting it on pole, nailing it. I mean, he's driving beautifully. He said, didn't he, earlier in the weekend in our programme, I know where I was going wrong. I found a better way with the car. And since then, he's just been on tip-top form. But he's still only a few hundreds quicker than, or even thousands quicker than Mark Webber. Webber can match him on pace.
And you have to feel for Adrian Newey. I mean, he loves his cars. He would hate it seeing that shot there as the car is sort of engulfed in, extinguisher smoke, whereas Ferrari and actually McLaren as well. Yeah, this was the next shot that we saw, wasn't it? They were happy as well. Then actually in here it was interesting. As Sebastian's engine was letting go and Alonso came past, a few people were insinuating that maybe Sebastian should have taken Alonso out to do his title challenge a favour.
We don't do things like that.
No, we don't.
But I reminded him that it would be at least a 2-race suspension and disqualification. So that wouldn't have been a clever move.
But let's remember that Fernando Alonso's the man under pressure with engines. At least Vettel's got another brand spanking new one to put in for the last 2 races, I understand. I think he's had...
We thought he'd just confirmed by Christian that they have 2 old ones with mileage left on it. They certainly don't have any.
They don't know. So he's used 8 of his 8, but he's got fresh ones. So that'll maybe cramp his style a bit on the Saturday morning practice. But we know that Alonso is really getting thin on engine mileage.
Yep, everybody's getting nice and marginal. Whereas McLaren really enjoyed this weekend. OK, so let's talk about where the title is now after this weekend. So Fernando Alonso picks up the win. Fernando Alonso now leads the championship, and you'd arguably say Fernando Alonso has the momentum. Is he going to be the world champion, do you think, Martin?
Of course he can win the world title, but we just, it's just guessing if you say who you think is going to win the world title. I just don't know. How can you read this year? I mean, the points expand and make it look much further apart than it really is. I mean, 11 points is a low place finish in old money, and really it's in the lap of the gods, isn't it? I mean, Mark Webber could easily be back in the lead of the title chase at the end of the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's turning around that fast.
It's interesting, though, of course, Fernando Alonso hasn't just got 11 points. He's got 11 points and the support of a teammate, which no one else in the championship battle enjoys at the moment. And talking of his teammate, Eddie, we'll get your point in a moment. But first, let's hear from Felipe Massa after today's race.
Felipe, congratulations. Good to see you back in the podium. What an eventful race.
Well, it was a race very difficult, to finish the race. Looking all the conditions we saw during the whole race from the beginning to the end. But I think it was a good job from Charlie. I think he did the start in the good time, which was still in the limit for the visibility, but it was okay. And at the end it was almost in the limit for the visibility. I mean, I couldn't see anything, especially we have a light in the steering wheel, which is very strong. In the dark condition, it was coming very strong to your face. But anyway, I think we did a great result, a good amount of points for the team, and I think that's very, very good for this condition on the championship and looking for the next two races as well.
Is this a fun race for drivers, or do you think let's just get to the end?
I think both. It's a fun race in some time, some direction on the race, but also sometimes you think it's better to finish because it starts to get in the difficult condition.
It's a bittersweet day because you're not really in the championship race now, but your teammate's leading it. Is that a good thing?
Well, yes. I think for the team it's good. The race was good. I think Fernando did a good job. He was also lucky, which is important. Looking also 2008 that I was not very lucky. You see how important is the lucky in the championship. And now we need to concentrate on the last two races.
Luca de Montezemolo has said that he wants you to support Fernando. That's what we've seen in the press. Have you felt any pressure? Has he said that to you?
No. I had pressure all the time. I am in Formula One all the time. I arrived in Ferrari, so it's for sure not different.
And your next race, your home race, Brazil, you must be really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that's really positive. So let's concentrate and try to do a great weekend in São Paulo.
Well done, Felipe. Great race from him today, but he couldn't quite match his teammate. Fernando Alonso picks up the win. He now leads the Drivers' Championship by 11 points. And I've been reminded on email and on Twitter, Eddie, it wouldn't be 11 points if it wasn't for that little swap on the track in Germany.
I thought we promised we wouldn't mention that again, did we, Jake?
I don't know whether we did.
Because we apply by what the rules and what the stewards do, and what that went to a full tribunal. The World Council decided what the penalty was, and I think we should just try and put it to bed. That is the position. The championship, there is 11 points between first and second place. Let's rock on up to Brazil and let's hope if we have a race half as good as the one we had here today, we'll have a cracker.
But you say he's got a teammate helping him out. When was the last time Massa took points off the two Red Bull drivers and Lewis Hamilton? It's not often it's happening. He's got to get up there in second place when Fernando wins to help him win the title. Yeah,
well, thank you very much to Silvio, who dropped us an email, and also Andrew and Jamie also got in touch. Emails about Ferrari. Everybody very impressed, actually, by the way that the Ferrari is driving. And that's something that we should mention, is how much Ferrari have turned around their car in the last few races, Eddie.
We've all heard a little accusations, they've had a little bit of a boost maybe with the engine, or you've had this. I actually don't subscribe to that. I think this car has evolved, it's got better. Fernando has found a very good way inside a team in his first year. There was a bit of a fracas, we all know, in Germany, and that got resolved. Massa knows clearly his place. He's definitely number two. It's Alonso's team. Alonso is bringing and guiding that team to a possible championship win.
OK, well, let's hear from that man. Let's hear from Fernando Alonso.
Fernando, congratulations. You're leading the championship and a great race win too.
Yeah, it's been a strange race. Obviously, very difficult to start with. Conditions, visibility-wise, very bad. So red flag, and then some doubts of when restart and how the circuit will be. So conditions didn't change when we restart, so we spent a couple of laps behind the safety car, and then everything cleans, and we saw Weber's problem, which of course changed our strategy for the race. Just finishing the race was enough for us at that point, but obviously when Sebastian had the problem was another gift, so we took it.
And tell us about your pit stop, because that must have been a heart-stopping moment there.
Yeah, I braked too late. Obviously, conditions were very tricky. The entry of the pits was wet. we made the last moment call because we saw Sebastian coming to the pits, and we were not planned to change tires, but when we saw him, we changed the strategy and we pit again with him. And with all this stress, I braked too late, and I think the position was very bad for the guys.
What an amazing championship this is shaping up to be. We've had 3 championship leaders in just one afternoon, and you've come out at the top. Are you really feeling that this championship could be yours?
Well, I think we have some possibilities. I think we had possibilities before coming here. We have a little bit more now with the retirement of the Red Bulls, but we saw a very good example today of one retirement. Anything can happen, or everything changed in the timetable. So I think we need to be consistent. As we said many times, another 2 podiums in Brazil and Abu Dhabi will be our goal, and let's try to make no mistakes and the car finish both races.
Well done, Fernando. He is now the man to beat in Formula One. That's just about it from us. We've been on air since 6 o'clock in the UK. That's about 5.5 hours. And we've got an email here from Sarah, a.k.a. Miss Pitstop, thanking you specifically, Martin, for keeping the nation entertained.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. Thank you.
For most of that time. Isn't that
granny?
lovely?
It's not my granny. I don't have any grannies left,
I can assure you it's Sarah in Bristol who got in touch, not Martin's granny. But 5.5 hours that's taught us a lot about how this championship is going to pan out, Eddie, and taught us a lot about what we can expect from Formula One in South Korea. And if it's like this for the next few years, I know they've signed up for 7 years to start with, it could be quite special.
Korea served up a roller coaster race. This was a remarkable effort. To think that it was only 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago in Singapore, we asked Bernie, was this going to happen? He wasn't and couldn't guarantee it. This has been a remarkable turnaround. Roller coaster, as I've just said, turned up a great result, enthralling race. I don't think you can ever ask for more than what we've just been served up today.
I was underwhelmed with the drivers on the grid. I thought they were being a bit wussy, to be honest, some of them, and I admired Lewis for what he said and what he tried to do. I ended up, after many hours later, being in awe of them all, especially those that made it to the finish.
Even Adrian Sutil?
He had a go, didn't he?
He had a go at just about everybody he came near, yes.
Not too many things he didn't hit, but he was going for it, wasn't he?
He was.
Talking about Sutil, what about his teammate? Liuzzi, well done to him. He finished 6th, which was he kept his nose clean when most people would have feared that he'd have fallen off. So I think fair credit to him. Yeah,
mentioned Michael Schumacher as well, having a strong finish. He did well. I watched from home in Japan a couple of weeks ago. I was impressed by him, and he did well here as well.
Yeah, but he was making overtakes. He looked confident in the car all weekend. He definitely carried some confidence from Suzuka to this track.
Yep. He did also say that he thought, of all the places, he thought he could get on the podium here. He was one short step short of that, and he drove particularly well as well. Special mention.
He survives another 2 weeks without getting fired then, does he?
No, I'm getting a lot of slag on this, and I'm just about able to get back into the Mercedes team home. You leave me alone. You look after yourself.
As we've just seen, he's trying to desperately build bridges with Ferrari on the F1 forum. He's trying to do the same with Mercedes as well.
I'll soon have no home to go to.
Really? You're always welcome in McLaren after this F1 forum.
Marie told you that a long time ago, Eddie.
Well, that's a separate story. We won't go into that one.
I think we better end the F1 forum about now. Thank you very much, guys. Nice to hang out with you both. And don't start panicking that you haven't got any Formula One to watch. In 2.5 hours, you can relive the race all over again on BBC One with the rerun there. And then, of course, the highlights as well tonight, 7 o'clock on BBC Two. Thank you very much for being part of our Formula One coverage this weekend. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for your company as well. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time when we head to Brazil. And once again in Formula One, nothing has been decided. Just how long is this championship battle going to run and run for? See you in a couple of weeks.
It's the worst condition I ever drove a car.